Oh.
You're listening to The Weather Junkies.
Oh boy. Large wedge tornado coming up into Tuscaloosa. A winter storm warning is in effect for our area.
So we can expect at least another 2 to 4 inches overnight. Then that snow
The National Weather Service in Huntsville has issued a tornado warning for northwestern Massachusetts.
14 to 22 inches of snow!
Good Thursday evening, and thank you for joining us here on The Weather Junkies. I'm Tyler Jankowski, joining the show from the Champlain Valley, alongside Dakota Smith, who is joining in from Colorado. Dakota?
Hey, Tyler, and hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. It's an awesome day in Colorado. Sunny skies, probably in the low 70s, maybe upper 60s. But we just finished up a pretty rainy bout of weather. I guess Monday we had a severe, I wouldn't call it an outbreak, but we had quite the hailstorm go through Denver and some of the suburbs of Denver and caused a ton of damage. And we'll talk about that in the trending in the Weatherverse section. And then Tuesday, Wednesday was rainy as well. And the only reason I talk about it is because we very rarely get these long stretches of rain. So it's been kind of dreary out here, but now looks like we're in a drier spell, so good for hiking this weekend. But we love the rain this time of the year. As I always say, fire season is upon us, so it's nice to get that rain. Tyler, how's the weather up there?
It has been terrible. Ugh. We've had this upper level low overhead, and temperatures have been way below average. The clouds have been locked in. I'm actually looking outside now, and it looks like the sky is blue, but the sun is obviously set. So we're gradually sort of getting out of this ugly pattern, but I don't know if you've seen, we have a coastal storm in New England as we go into this weekend. Mother's Day looks very wet. So it's a slow climb, but I do see 70s and 80s by later next week, and I cannot wait.
Yeah, that'll be nice. Precip's nice, though, always, whenever you can get it, as long as it doesn't hang around too long.
Well, not on Sunday.
Well, yeah, I guess you're right, Mother's Day. You can do Mother's Day inside.
Yeah.
No, not a fan.
That's going to be, well, I'm just thinking of all the business owners that don't want rain. They're afraid of people not going out to eat and stuff like that.
Yeah, going to the ball game. Yeah, so today we have some awesome guests, plural. We have 2 guests tonight. They are from the Bugs&Stuff podcast. So a little cross, they like to call it, I think, podication or something as a play.
Like pollination.
Like pollination, yeah. Yeah. We have Cari and Caitlin from Bugs&Stuff. Both are recently defended master's students in ecology at Bowling Green State University. And we're here to talk about weather, climate, and bugs. So Cari and Caitlin, welcome to the show. And how's the weather in Ohio?
It's been pretty chilly, like 50s, 40s, rainy today.
It was rainy for like a couple,
But it was like threatening to rain for most of the day.
Threatening to rain.
It definitely rained last
In our
night.
non-weather field.
Yeah.
this is what we think the weather's like.
It was sunny the last couple days, but still chilly.
Yeah. Huh. Well, cool. And thanks for coming on the show. We're gonna go into trending in the Weatherverse here, and we're gonna give you a bigger intro and learn a little bit more about yourselves after that, and then talk about weather, climate, and bugs. Before we go into the trending in the Weatherverse section, I want to do something real quick that I have been saying I was going to do for a few episodes, and that is give some of our iTunes reviewers, raters and reviewers some shout outs. So we have 2 that we haven't given shout outs yet. One is the Mandanger. I don't know how to say your name, but you said it's well done, interesting, and informative. I love when they bring in a guest from a cross-disciplinary viewpoint. And how fitting, because that's what we're doing tonight. A second one is from Section 1 Guy. He said, Tyler and Dakota have a great flow between them, and bring their perspective on weather to you in a fun and informative way. It is a must listen for their weekly segments and interviews. Thank you very much, Section 1 guy. And thanks for everyone who gives us reviews. We will give you shout outs on the show whenever you do that because you're awesome. Tyler, bring in our first tweet here.
The first one is from the Colorado Rockies. They are at Rockies, and they have a picture. This is Coors Field right now. It's a hail-covered baseball field from a few days ago. So it looks like a hailstorm blew through. Yeah,
it was a terrible hailstorm, and it just happened to hit an area where a lot of people live. Put down, gosh, I think there were confirmed baseball size pieces of hail. I think downtown Denver only saw maybe quarters or ping pong.
Where's this stadium relative to downtown?
This is in downtown.
Oh, it's in downtown.
Yeah, basically. And they never got this game played, even though the storm was done. I think the storm was basically done when first pitch was supposed to happen, but they could never clean up the field in time. So they never got the game done. What's that?
I wonder how many hail cancellations there are in history.
Well, last year this same thing happened at Coors, but I don't think they've canceled. I think it wasn't thick enough that it melted. But yeah, I'd be curious too. You hear of rainouts and lightning outs, and you very, very rarely do you hear of hail outs.
You probably don't ever have snow outs.
It has snowed, I think, during games before, but I don't think they've ever canceled for snow. So it was an interesting day Monday, and it was really bad for people who had their cars out and had some of their houses damaged because some of the hail was big enough to do that. And so the next day, there were a lot of pictures of people having to put trash bags on their windows and everything. So never like to see that. But the Front Range is basically, this time of the year, it's basically like the hail alley. I think part of northern Colorado gets the most frequent hailstorms of anywhere in the country, probably the world, but I'm not quite sure on that. But it's that time of the year, so hopefully we don't get too many of these.
Ready for our next tweet?
Yeah, we have some audio to play. So Tyler, if you could introduce this tweet, I'll play the audio.
This tweet comes from Eddie Radosevich on Twitter. He's at Eddie_RADO. It's a video of Mike Morgan from K4 in Oklahoma City. The tweet says, just an incredible mid-afternoon severe weather, #HummelBrag. Shots fired, shots fired. So we'll roll the audio here so you can listen in.
Sure. Again, live documentation here, nothing ever delayed. We would never do that to you. In other words, the NEXRAD data is delayed data by anywhere from 2 to 3 minutes. We've got 2 Doppler radars here that are live. It's an investment in the warning process. It's an investment in your safety. And I think we all know that to be fact, but sometimes we just have to remind you, we've never given anything delayed that is not live, because that just will not be fair to you. So live data here, big hail getting.
So that is audio from Mike Morgan, KFOR, in Oklahoma City. Today, severe weather rolled through the Oklahoma area, and he is basically flaunting the station-owned live radars. Dakota, you have some fiery comments, I see.
Well, I don't know. I just wanted to talk about this with you because you are an on-air meteorologist and presumably have, I don't know if you have radars there, but you used to work somewhere where they had their own radars. I don't know. It just seems weird.
I've never worked at a station that's had its own radar, but I've certainly worked in markets where others did. I know Mike he's a controversial figure among the meteorology community on social media. But I mean, if you have 2 of your own radars at a station, that is incredible. I mean, that's a huge investment. So maybe some would argue that you shouldn't flaunt it that way, but there's no arguing that it is a big investment. Yeah, I mean, the next red radars are pretty darn good nowadays with sales and all that type of stuff, but maybe sometimes they don't give them enough credit. I don't know. I got to play devil's advocate.
No, that's fine. I genuinely wanted to hear your opinion. I don't know. I thought it was weird timing for him to kind of flaunt that, just because it's right when he's supposed to be, talking about the warnings and getting out the warnings and talking about the storms. But another meteorologist in that market fired back and said something along the lines of, "We have our own radars too."
Well, that's a good point. I think I was talking about this with the guy I work with, Tom Essner, and that's a stressful market to work in. I mean, it's easy to sit back on the couch and have dinner and bash everyone, but it's really life or death out there. So
at the end of the day, though, to me it doesn't seem like it really matters if you have your own radar or not. There are radars covering your area regardless. Unless one goes out, then it's a huge deal.
There is some advantage to having a quick and low-level scan. If you have a low-level scan close to the ground every minute, I think that's better than every 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's fair.
You could debate how big the advantage is, but I think if you have like an EF4 tornado on the ground, getting that low-level scan every minute, you can certainly, if there's a debris wall, you know exactly where the tornado is.
Yeah.
So I think there's some advantage there, but certainly the gap has closed a lot in the last decade.
Yeah, it'd be nice if they would share their data with the National Weather Service.
Well, you can't share everything.
Well, the National Weather Service does, but I guess that's because everyone pays for it.
For that data in our tax dollars.
I know. It's just, if we're all in this to save lives and property, then
I agree.
But
okay, I love fire trucks. You could say, well, how come Pierce Manufacturing doesn't share their calculations and engineering expertise and give their formulas for a 107-foot aerial to all the manufacturers because it's a taller aerial and it's stronger and no one else has it? Well, then you don't make any money if you don't have the advantage. And that's a moving institution.
It's a gray ethical area. I'll give you that. But let's move on here because actually our next tweet is a tweet from Mike Morgan, and it's just straight up stupid. You can follow him at Mike Morgan K4. He tweeted, "My tornado risk map today. Most favorite area for tornado, bright red. Blah 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 blah." And the real thing I want to talk about is the picture, the graphic in his tweet. He tweets out a graphic with tornado threat in red, but then in the description of it, he says peak tornado strength, F3, stronger supercells Wednesday, have plus or minus F3 tornado potential. So first of all, the F scale is not the scale that meteorologists use anymore. It's the Fujita scale. We now use the enhanced Fujita scale, which is the EF scale. So that's one thing wrong with this. Also, what in the heck does plus or minus F3 mean? And how is he making that prediction? What data is he using to make that prediction? It's ridiculous, honestly. He should get his, to me, he should get his meteorologist title revoked for like a day or something, because this is just absurd. And I know it probably doesn't really matter and make a difference, people reading it, but from a science perspective, it's just straight stupid. So, Mike, I hope you're listening. Probably not, though.
Well, I have a couple of thoughts here.
Yeah, go ahead, Tyler.
First of all, I'm very aware of the controversy this causes on social media every year, all the time. I will also say that he works in the Oklahoma City market, one of the biggest severe weather markets in the United States. He has not worked there for 6 days. He's worked there for many, many years. So what is working? I feel like we don't get the full story here on social media. And I'm not defending using F3 as opposed to EF3 or even the idea of doing this. But maybe something here is working. I mean, why would you do it if it didn't work? I don't know. I just think about stuff like that. Oklahoma City is a big market, and if you continually do this, there must be something about it that's been successful. The other comment I have is the plus or minus F3. I don't understand that. I don't understand that. But
yeah,
But I know people hit this so hard when they see it on social media. And sometimes I step back and think, well, maybe there's something here that we're missing. And I know obviously people want deterministic information, and that's certainly a deterministic forecast. And I know the science is not there yet. But is there something that maybe we're leaving out of the discussion? I mean, why would you keep doing this? What possibly?
That is a very level-headed approach. Yeah, we're best case scenario that there's something there that we're missing, and
I would love to hear his explanation for it.
I would too. Yeah. Yeah. So I will leave that there. I had a little too many hot takes there. We'll move on to our final tweet here from Entomology Society. This is a great segue to our main segment. You can follow them at Entsoch America. Their tweet says, an outbreak of, oh boy, I can't pronounce this. Can you guys pronounce this?
Acanthoto. I don't know. I don't want to do it.
Something like that.
It's a bark beetle.
Yeah, it's a bark beetle.
It's a bark beetle. There we go. This bark beetle has killed more than 10,000 American sweet gum trees near Shanghai, China. That sounds like a bummer. I don't know. So we have beetles that kind of do this in the U.S. to pine trees. Is this like a similar type of beetle?
Do bark beetles eat pine trees? Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably. But something that I think is kind of important to this story, the sweet gum tree is an American tree that's in China, so it doesn't belong there, first of all. And there's no way to control them. They were brought in for ornamental reasons, so they're kind of invasive. And this beetle that they found inside these trees actually killing them, which is unheard of in the sweet gum tree, was previously unknown. It was undocumented. So it's a brand new beetle, and they don't know yet how it's killing the trees, because a lot of bark beetles bring in a fungus infection to the trees when they burrow in.
Like Dutch elm disease is brought in by these beetles. And they basically chew their way underneath the bark, and they make all these different cavities, and then they grow their fungus like little gardeners.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's
but then they end up killing the tree.
Yeah.
Yeah. From what I could tell, out here at least, the pine beetles basically like shut off the water resource for trees. Essentially, the fungus does, at least, I guess. Am I understanding that right?
So the beetles are eating that area in between the inner tree and the bark, and that's where all of the water and nutrients flow.
Yeah, those are the living cells of the tree. So a tree only has a very small amount of actually living cells. And that's what happens if you were to, what is it? When you cut the bark. When you girdle a tree, you cut off the bark.
That's a fun word.
And that's killing all of the living cells, so the tree can't pump up the water to its leaves.
Huh. Interesting. So sorry, I guess I jumped the gun there. Before we, really get into bugs here and talk about insects and everything, could you guys tell us some of your background? How did you get into entomology, and what are you doing now in your program, and how was defending that? I guess you could kind of finish with that.
Okay, so I guess we both study very similar things. So I guess I'll talk about what we just study. So we're in the Polini lab, and we study soil invertebrates for the most part. Our lab in general studies different invertebrates and how they affect ecosystem processing. So such as, carbon.
Decomposition, carbon cycling.
Yeah, those kind of things. So Cari and I in particular are interested in how micronutrients in the soil, so things like calcium, zinc, and sodium or table salt, affect how invertebrates, how much they're eating, so how much decomposition is happening. And I worked in northern Michigan, and Cari got to work in Hawaii. So that's a little bit of a background on us.
Gotcha. And have you been thinking about bugs since you were little, or is it something you kind of developed? Actually, I was listening to one of your podcasts, and I forget which one, but one of you I know was not into bugs as a kid. It was the other way around. So maybe tell us about that, because a lot of weather people are like weather people from the very beginning. Is it the same way in entomology?
I don't think so. Well, maybe it's just me though. So Caitlin and I had really different childhoods to get us here to study bugs. My mom hates the outdoors, and she would never let me go outside and like play in the dirt and everything. So it's kind of like the biggest revenge scheme ever that I study bugs in the dirt now. But you had very supportive family.
Yeah, so I grew up in Maine, and we were always outside, and I remember being a kid and collecting ants and watching them move around and watching them fight with each other. Just
Gotcha.
things like that.
Yeah. That's really cool. I did stuff like that as a kid, but I didn't follow that path. I wish sometimes I wish I did, because I missed the bug part of, like, I don't know, my interest.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I used to do this really cruel thing, which I would like get some crickets and then find a praying mantis and put the crickets next to the praying mantis and watch him just murder these crickets.
We've all done that. Don't feel bad.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes me feel a little better. Anyways,
some of
sorry.
our lab mates put spiders and grasshoppers purposely in their experiment together to make them eaten.
Yeah.
So
That is so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's awesome. So you guys have this podcast called Bugs and Stuff. For those that have never listened to it before, it's Bugs and Stuff. You can listen to it on iTunes, and you can follow them at Bugs and Stuff on Twitter. Tell us about this podcast and what you're doing with it, and what you've done with it in the past.
Yeah, so we started Bugs and Stuff because we really wanted to get into science communication, and our initial idea was to talk about cool bug stuff, and really it kind of turned into instead more stuff than bugs. And we ended up talking a lot about grad school because that's something that's just not done very often.
Yeah.
And we really wanted to make people aware of what a grad school is really like, because it's not out there.
Yeah, nobody knows. I don't know, when I go home to my parents really don't have an idea of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Ever.
And when I started grad school, I really didn't know what to expect.
So we hope we're helping people who want to go into grad school or who are thinking about it, at least in ecology. We can only speak for ecology.
Right.
But
That's really cool. I should listen more. I've listened to 2 episodes, and I mean, I can relate to a lot of things you're saying. I'm actually about to defend in June, so it was really cool listening to your post-thesis episode. Yeah, that was really great. So I guess, well, we want to talk about climate and weather and insects, because, fusing our 2 podcasts together here for a night. I guess maybe could you kind of briefly talk about maybe some of the crossovers of climate and future climate and how that might impact some of the work you're doing?
So we think a lot about climate as opposed to weather and projected changes in climate. So some of our lab does work using heat lamps, and they'll raise the temperature so much above ambient to see what changes in the bugs or in their activity and ecosystem processes. And then some of our other lab mates change the water to look at how much nutrients are leaching out of the water or out of the soil, because that's something that's going to change too.
And then I guess we look more at how soil will impact climate. So we kind of look at how much CO2 is being released because the bugs are eating and they're respiring and helping the microbes respire, and they're releasing CO2 into the environment, which is important for climate change predictions in particular.
But there's a lot of other bugs that are going to be affected by changing climate too, like maybe pests to corn and mosquitoes and all of that stuff. So we're pretty aware of those too.
Mm-hmm.
So could you talk more specifically about what might happen in a warmer climate and what that might do to some of the microbes and all that good stuff?
So in the case with our studies, if as you get warmer, you get organisms that, well, first of all, the microbial community is eating more because they're reproducing faster and they're just moving well, they're not moving, but they're eating faster because their metabolism goes up when it's warmer.
So they're releasing more CO2 while
Yeah.
they're doing that, which just kind of perpetuates the problem there.
Mhm.
But also, as temperatures get warmer, we have more bugs, and the bugs are more active too.
Mhm. So they're eating more, and thus providing more food
for the microbes.
and then the cycle just keeps going on. And then, yeah.
It's like a positive feedback, basically.
Yeah, that's exactly
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah. Huh. Is there any? I feel like I see some like article floating around every like other month about like past insects and how they were like giant at one point. Because I don't know, maybe they didn't have as many predators and it was a different climate. Is that something you look at, or is that like kind of too like sci-fi-y?
You mean like dinosaur age insects?
I honestly have no idea what I'm talking about. But
I mean, they were a lot bigger.
Well, bugs in the tropics too are big.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But I think that's just it because it's warmer down there.
Yeah.
But like prehistoric bugs were big because they were the first things, right?
Mm.
I think
that were out there. We don't
study
paleontology, but I think I heard somewhere that it was a problem with the amount of oxygen in the air. There was more CO2, so they needed to be bigger to get more oxygen. That might be a lie. I don't know.
I thought it was more oxygen. I'm not sure.
This isn't our field.
Okay, my bad.
They were bigger though. They were
definitely
bigger.
bigger.
Really big dragonflies. That's like one of the major examples. Is the dragonflies were huge.
Okay, yeah, my bad.
No, it's okay.
So I hear out here, as I mentioned, we have the pine beetle thing, and one part of increasing global temperatures and increasing local temperatures is that the pine beetles aren't more of them are surviving the winters because it doesn't the temperature doesn't get down to a certain threshold to kill some of them in some areas. What are some other examples of that? Maybe pests that can move north now and stay for a winter, things like that.
So
I don't know if I've heard of any pests migrating north for the
ticks do.
Winter. Oh, ticks do?
Well, they're moving northward and they're living longer into the season. So they're getting like into Canada and stuff, and then people in Canada
that's right.
are getting so that because it's getting warmer, their threshold for cold tolerance is going up further.
Yeah.
So they're able to get into more northern latitudes.
So poor Canada has Lyme disease now because of us.
Yeah.
That is disgusting.
Yeah.
I'm from Maryland and I know ticks and I hated that.
Yeah. Ticks.
Sorry, I cut you off.
I think
it's okay.
Mosquitoes are doing a similar thing.
Yeah.
There's issues with mosquitoes.
That's the question I was going to have. One of the big impacts I could see is maybe a greater footprint for mosquitoes. And I was looking up diseases that they carry. I'm from Connecticut, so the one that's most familiar to me is West Nile virus and stuff like that. But I see a whole list here: yellow fever, Eastern equine encephalitis.
And the warmer temperatures aren't only perpetuating those mosquitoes, they're also bringing more further north the mosquitoes that carry those diseases like dengue and Zika. And that's why we have a problem with those now.
But mosquitoes are interesting because they also need wet environments. So if the climate were to change where there are fewer precipitation events, then you could have a decrease in the number of mosquitoes because you have less standing water. So mosquitoes are kind of iffy. It depends on what is happening to the weather.
Yeah.
How do mosquitoes work in terms of temperature and how do they live throughout the whole year? Are you familiar with that?
Oh, most of them die in the winter.
So they die and then...
Well, I guess I don't see too many in the fall either, but I guess once it gets warmer, they'll be more around. But they reproduce using standing water.
Mm-hmm.
So do their larvae live over the winter?
I don't know. Maybe they can.
They have to, because I don't know how else they would get back here.
Well, if you go to Florida, there's probably mosquitoes year round, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they do travel around.
somewhere between Florida and Connecticut, that line, the line of living year round has to come north, I would think.
Right. Yeah. Especially as the warmer temperatures increase northward.
Yeah, so that's the big issue is slowly you're going to start to see more of these pests come out earlier. They're going to bring these diseases, and that's going to be bad news for us.
Yeah, it doesn't sound great. So one weather-related thing to insects is I was reading oh shoot, I forget whose blog it was. It was one of your blogs. And I was reading about how salted roads may attract ants. And it got me thinking to areas that have harsh winters and the roads are being treated over and over. Maybe if it's a late winter, it's being treated later into the spring, and that might influence. So I was hoping you could talk about that and what impacts treated roads have on insects.
So treated roads have, I mean, obviously there's too much salt. So eventually it might become toxic for organisms. But for things like ants and even large herbivores like moose and deer, they need salt and they're not getting it from their plant material that they're eating. And so they're attracted to the roads. But that only spreads a little way into the forest. So it's not really spreading that far.
And it's only as big of a deal in the inland areas. Like on the coast of Massachusetts, it's probably not as big of a deal as it is here in Ohio.
Because you have this limitation, and on coastal areas you have the ocean, which is sending in aerosols that are coming in, and so the ants in that area aren't going to be as attracted to salt because they already have enough, versus like ants that are more inland, like in Ohio, they might be more attracted.
But if they salt the roads less, do you think that there will be less ants?
I don't know. I don't think so.
What happens when that salt gets into like the waterways? What is that? Does that do anything to the reproductive process of certain insects?
Ooh.
I don't know. We're not aquatic people.
Sorry.
It's hard to like move that boundary.
Yeah.
Just because insects are so diverse. But I imagine if there was a lot of it, it would affect the larval insects that live in the water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's some kind of threshold where it's good and then suddenly becomes toxic.
And certain invertebrates need more than others, so it just depends on what they need. But I don't think it's good when salt gets into the fresh water. Because those organisms are adapted for fresh water, and then they get this. It probably has lower levels. It's easier to get toxic.
Yeah.
Exposure to salt.
Is there any other sort of bug and climate and weather related stuff that you guys wanted to bring up?
Well, today I did read, I was like scrolling through Twitter, and I did read that insects are declining, which can have a big impact on different organisms that eat them, such as birds. So a lot of people are in fish and things that are eating them. So that's a huge issue. And I'm assuming that has to do with climate change and human related disturbance and things like that.
So like the global population is declining?
I read somewhere that they did the study in Germany, I think. So in Germany, they noticed a decrease in the amount of insects. And then pollinator species are also declining, which is a huge issue.
That's been a thing for a while.
Could you guys, for me, settle the score on the bees? Because I feel like I've read a whole bunch of reasons, and I never know if it's the right reason or not on why the bees went away.
I think it's a little bit of all of them.
Yeah, the temperature's changing, the precipitation's changing, and we use a lot of pesticides now. So every time you spray a pesticide, when the bee goes to that flower and then brings it back to its beehive, it can kill the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of issues with monocultures. So on top of this, we have like these huge fields of the same plant. And I think there have been studies that show if you have areas that don't have a monoculture, so wildflower areas, you get better pollination of your agricultural plants because they have a variety of food to munch on.
But you have to be careful too when you're thinking about the bees, because a lot of people will say, oh, well, the bees are increasing, but they forget that we have these invasive bees here. Like the bumblebees and the honeybees, they don't really belong over here.
Wait, the honeybees don't?
Honeybees are not. They're brought in by humans because we like honey.
Right.
Wait,
But
so which bees do we like?
There's a whole bunch of native bees that we have here, but you just don't see them as often because the other bees have really taken over and like just killed off a lot of them.
And they're so important for pollinating like native flowers and things like that. There's like whole area, like whole groups of like non-social bees. So they're individuals that just live alone, which we usually think of bees as like totally social animals, and they live in these big like mega communities, but some bees just live alone.
Wow, you just blew my mind because I always thought honeybees were like the good. I mean, I knew carpenter bees were not good, but
I mean, they're not horrible. They're still pollinating our things, and we need them to pollinate them. But
some of our native plants are hurt because we don't have all of these native bees that once pollinated.
Yeah. After the show, I would love some info on bees because I want to see what an American bee looks like.
I'll get you some.
Okay, thanks. So, random question here. What are your favorite insects?
Good question.
Are we talking insects or invertebrates?
I want insects.
An insect. I don't usually think about my favorite insect.
Okay, sorry. You can give me invertebrates.
Well, I have an insect.
You have an insect?
Yes.
Okay.
There's this wasp, this little tiny itty bitty wingless wasp that no one's the Platygastridae. No one has probably ever seen them without a microscope in their entire lives. That they're so friggin' cute.
They're like little aliens.
Yes.
With like three, like, I don't know. They're just chubby and cute and adorable.
That's cool.
But if we had to,
what's the name? Is it has a name?
I think it's just in this. It's in the subfamily Platygastridae.
Yeah, there's a whole group.
I'll send you a picture with the bee info.
But it doesn't have like a common name or anything. It just has the.
No, they're so small.
Nobody. Only people who have a microscope can see them.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. I'm scared though. That sounds scary.
No. It's cute.
They live in the soil usually.
Yeah.
That's where we find them.
Gotcha.
What's your favorite invertebrate, Caitlin?
Well, I love red velvet mites. They're so adorable. They're like little plushy bean bags with legs. They walk around the forest. There's giant ones too that are from India, and they are like the size of a dime. They're huge.
That sounds terrifying. Okay.
They're so adorable. They're bright red. Oh, they're fluffy.
So,
and then we both like millipedes a lot.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's cool. I like millipedes. It's interesting from your perspective. You're like thinking about what they look like under a microscope, and not.
Yeah.
I would never think about that. Cari, I heard on one of your podcasts that you don't trust grasshoppers. Can you tell me about that?
Oh, no. I do not trust grasshoppers. They look like aliens. They have so many modes of transportation. I don't know. They're just not trustworthy.
Are you sure it wasn't because of a Bug's Life? Or
it could very well be because of Bug's Life. I did really love that movie.
That's really funny.
Cricket hairworm.
The what?
The cricket hairworm.
No, it's not because of the cricket hairworm. That's gross, though.
Okay, sorry. I just wanted to ask you about that because I always like grasshoppers.
It's entirely irrational, and I know it. I just don't like them.
Yeah, well, that's cool. My cat really likes grasshoppers. Chasing them. Okay, so Caitlin, I when you guys were talking about kind of your future and what you're going to do after your master's, congratulations, by the way. Caitlin, you said that you were definitely not going to do the PhD thing, and you were looking at more communication stuff for a job. I think both of you could probably talk to this. So I guess maybe what in communication sparks your interest? What in science communication sparks your interest? And what do you hope to do in the future when it comes to science communication?
I guess I like science communication because it allows you to talk. Okay, I really enjoy writing. And it also is like a big old puzzle to me when I have to write for different audiences and figure out how to formulate my words to make people understand better. And I just find that so much fun to get people to understand science in a way that's easy and fun, and they can get as much fun out of it as I do. So I guess that's what I like about communication.
Yeah. What about you, Cari?
I really like the education side of the communication, and my big thing is I love outreach and I love working with kids and just like blowing their mind at everything that I have to say. I love that look when they're like, "Oh my God, are you serious?" And then they're just like full of wonder and excitement. So that's really what draws me to science communication.
Well, that's cool. We have a group out here called the Little Shop of Physics, and they go to schools and do like demos. And yeah, I've seen that reaction before. Like, whoa.
It's unbeatable.
Definitely fulfilling. Would you guys have anything planned for future podcast episodes or future projects that you're going to be working on?
We have a bunch of cool podcasts coming up. One where we're talking about cricket powder. Yeah, so people grind up crickets and you use it kind of like flour.
Oh my God. You make bread out of crickets?
Well, we've never made bread out of crickets, but you can.
You could. It's kind of like protein powder.
Yeah.
A little bit. It's kind of like a weird mixture between flour and protein powder. So depending on how you mix it up with other stuff, you can cook different things.
Have you ever tried it?
Yeah, we made cookies with it. We made grasshopper cookies with it.
Gee,
Not literally grasshopper cookies. We made the mint grasshopper cookie with the cricket flour, but it was funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, you couldn't tell that it was in there at all.
Mm-mm.
It's pretty wild.
Whoa. Okay. That blows my mind as well. Wow. Sorry, I interrupted you completely. What are you doing with the cricket powder? Sorry.
Oh, well, we made cookies.
Okay.
On the podcast.
On the podcast. We talked to the guy who made it. So we're talking about kind of how sustainable it is and how other people in other countries eat bugs like it's no big deal. And we're just all weird over here in America.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we like cows. I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting. Huh. Cool. So you want to plug your all your Twitter handles and where to find your podcast and everything and your website?
Sure. So you can find our podcast at Bugs&Stuff Pod on Twitter, and we're also on iTunes and SoundCloud. And our blog is bugsandstuffpod.wordpress.com.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you go and listen to them, it's a lot like the show tonight, where it's just kind of ad-libbed and
Yep.
I've really enjoyed the 2 episodes that I've listened to. So you got to follow over here. But that's gonna do it for tonight, I think. Thanks so much for joining us and talking bugs and blowing my mind several times.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So to plug our stuff here, if you don't follow us on Twitter, you can follow us at the WX Junkies. Give us a like on Facebook. You can listen to this podcast on iTunes or any podcast platform. And go ahead and give us a rating or review if you please. We'll be certain to give you a shout out on the show. And you can find any of the information about the show at theweatherjunkies.com. Tyler, we have a show planned next week. What are we doing?
Next week, we have Garrett Argianis on the show. We'll be talking about forensic meteorology and what it's like to be in that part of the field, and perhaps dabble a little bit into broadcast, as Garrett is a broadcast meteorologist alongside his forensic work. And then after that, the final week of May, believe it or not, we have already scheduled out, and on that show we'll have Greta Shum from Climate Central. That's May 25th. Next week is Garrett, though, and we're excited for that. For this episode, though, we're thankful that the Bugs and Stuff crew would come on here with this episode. And for Dakota and I, thank you for listening. We hope that you'll join us right back here next week.
Cow. I gotta go, Julia. We got cows.